Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. I call to order the meeting of the Manassas Park Governing Body for Tuesday, April 11th, 2023. First, we have approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a motion to approve?
Moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion carries. Next, we have public comment time. We have first signed up is Mr. Mike Smith. Mr. Smith, please come to the microphone, state your name, address, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Our city clerk, Ms. Connor, will be the timer. Is that okay, Lena? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the governing body. I wasn't planning on being here tonight, but I came home earlier this evening and found this taped to our door, a supposed violation from something that occurred in 2017 on our property. And we bought our house in 2020. So whatever this was that transpired occurred before we even bought the house. The house has been bought and sold multiple times since this became a supposed issue. It feels punitive, and I am complaining about the harassment by city code enforcement officers. We work hard to keep our house neat and clean. I might be slightly biased, but I think it's one of the nicest houses on the block. Several times we've been harassed by members of code enforcement and zoning about the structures that were built by previous owners. Currently, they're saying our 2 driveways are in violation. However, there's another house just 3 doors down that also has 2 driveways. Given all the complaints in the city about not enough parking, you'd think they would encourage people to have 2 driveways. I pick up a lot of trash. I also complain a lot about the trash. But it feels like instead of doing something about the trash, the code enforcement officers are coming after us. And it feels like harassment. They're asking us to do something that would unequivocally detract from the value of our home, something that was in the condition that when we purchased it, it had the 2 driveways. We've not added one, and we are not in agreement that any changes should be made regarding our driveways. This is not a good use of city resources, it's not a good use of taxpayer money, and it's not morally right to request us make this change. And because I can't come to you guys without a picture.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. Nice looking house, right?
It's very nice.
It's nice.
City manager, would you like to comment, please?
Yeah, so I'm not going to discuss any details of the cases, just in case it does go to litigation. But what I would say is that we don't harass residents. We respond to complaints or to, we conduct surveys across the city, and we determine what's in violation. So if the resident feels like he is being harassed, if he wants to provide me specific examples via email, and I can go ahead and set up a personnel investigation on that, because that's never our intent. But from my understanding is that people on that street have been, I guess, complaining about different violations on each other. We have to go out there. We can't ignore a violation that's brought to our attention, because that's not equal enforcement, and we have to enforce equally. If any violations are brought to us, we're going to always enforce those violations per the law. But for that specific case, I'm not going to discuss it. It sounds like it may end up going to litigation, so I'm not going to have any comment on that publicly.
Okay. But you suggested that Mr. Smith send you an email.
Yeah, specifically, since from a personnel management standpoint, if he's feeling harassed by our employees, that's something I need to investigate.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Lisa Smith, would you like to come, state your name, address, and Lena will be the timer.
Okay.
Thank you.
Hi. My husband speaks much better than I do. I'm from Baltimore City, and you're going to get into Baltimore City now because I'm angry. I'm like, we do everything that we can to keep our house looking nice. There's so much parking on our street. There's so many. My view is blocked coming in and out of my driveway on each side. So just even to pull out, I've almost been hit numerous times because the houses on the other side have so many cars lined up. It's a good thing that we have space in front of our house because the school bus parks there in the morning. Multiple people park there, trucks park there, Amazon trucks park there, FedEx trucks park there, and so they can go around and make their deliveries because there's nowhere else for them to park. I also do not appreciate this being taped to my door like I'm getting evicted or something. This is not professional at all. It says certified mail. This is not certified mail. It was taped to my door. I don't appreciate it. I don't like it. It could have blown off the door. We could have not gotten it. And I also, there's just so much about this that is not wrong. This handwritten stuff right here, this could have been written today for all I know. I don't have any proof that this was written back in 2017. And we've also spoke to the previous owner that lived there before us who was not made aware of this. And they did everything that they could by the book. And I've met these people. They were upstanding people. They washed their hands with this city because they were done with it all. And I understand why now. But this is not acceptable to me. And like I said, we are not going to take that driveway out. I'm not for it. If I got to take the driveway out, you're going to make the price of our house go down. And it's not a good thing to do at all. It's like we paid this much money because we like the house the way it was. It's going to stay that way. And we will fight this as much as we can. If we have to sue, if we have to go to litigation, if we have to sue Manassas Park, I'm all for it because this is not right. You know, and again, I owned a house in Baltimore City for 15 years and never had one issue in anything like this.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. Is there anyone else who is not signed up but who would still like to make public comment? Okay, seeing no one and hearing no one, we will move on.
Do you want the picture back? Or, Ms. Mayor, do you need a copy? Do you want a copy of the?
This?
We can keep that.
Okay. Moving on to number 3. Number 3 is a public hearing. The topic of the public hearing is increase in city manager contract approval authority. I declare the public hearing open.
Good evening. I prepared the ordinance and the resolution that are before you now based upon your conversation last week and the direction that came out of that meeting. I want to point out that since the ordinance was uploaded, there have been a couple of changes. You should have before you a redline version of those changes between what was uploaded and what has also been provided to you, so that the requirement that there is money in the budget for a change order or a purchase order, and that I've reviewed the purchase order, the construction change order, and approved it as to form. Both of those came out of last week, and they were not in this. We previously just increased the amount that was in the code previously. This time we modified it a little bit as requested or directed by the governing body last week. With that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Comments or questions?
Just have a comment.
Yes, ma'am.
I did hear from a few residents about this, and they're not happy. They want to keep it as $25,000. So I wanted to let the members my fellow city council members know that the citizens have spoken. Granted, it may not be every citizen. Clearly, I didn't speak to every citizen, but the ones that spoke to me, this is their stance.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions?
Yeah, just a clarification, I guess, from the discussion from last week. I think Councilmember Amaya brought that the point about the signs. Originally, it was $250, budgeted, approved, but then the contract came back over $1 million, right? So hypothetically, say it was say $350,000. He has authority to sign off on that contract?
Not if it's over budget.
Well,
Can I hear from city manager or the dean?
yeah, no authority for that because, well, number one, it's over to the 100,000 limit that you're voting on tonight, and then number two.
No, I'm saying if it's hypothetically within your budget.
Yeah, that's not what you guys are voting on tonight. You're not giving me authority to prove anything that's within budget. You're giving me authority to have a spending limit up to $100,000. So, but also separate from that, if something is budgeted at $50,000, even though I have the $100,000 authority, it's you guys set the budget at $50,000. So for me to spend more than that, I had to come back and seek a budget amendment. So there are two different things.
So
The budget
when
process.
would this scenario come in play, I guess?
Yeah,
So
this
I'm trying to
scenario.
figure
Yeah.
out
So right now.
the need for this, and when would this be in play?
Yeah, so let's say a good example, the fire department needs to procure some, EMS equipment, and the contract comes back at $40,000. And it's a current price right now. If we don't lock it in, price is going to go up, right?
And what do we budget for, like, say, 30,000?
Let's say it's you budgeted 50,000.
Okay.
Okay? And it comes back at 40,000. Right now, my limit's 25,000. I couldn't approve that from Chief Soper. I'd have to come back, we'd have to do an agenda item, we'd have to bring it back to you all. You guys would have to vote to approve that contract. That's the process right now. If, let's say, the budget was at 30,000 and he came back at 40,000, even now that I have the 100,000 authority, I wouldn't be able to approve it because I'd have to come back to you all to raise that budget from 30 to 40,000.
Okay.
Yeah, so they're two separate processes.
Yeah, that's-
We can't exceed budgeted appropriated spending. That's what happened in FY16. That was one of the audit dings that we had, was that the city staff spent more than what the governing body appropriated to it to spend.
Okay.
Do you have a follow-up, Councilmember Javed?
No, I think those are,
Comments or questions? Okay.
I'd like to just point something out if I could,
Yes.
really quick. Okay, so one of them is in the city code, that's for purchase orders and construction change orders. So purchase orders are typically things where we go out and we buy products and we don't have a contract associated with them. Okay, we're just going to buy them. Like you, say we have computers and we have $90,000 of computers that need to be purchased for the city, that's a purchase order. Okay, if there's some sort of a service component with it, we'll go ahead then and enter into a contract for it. Or an agreement that is covered through the resolution. So they're very similar, but they serve different purposes. And then, of course, the change order is just we have an agreement in place, something came up, something unforeseen, we need to make a change to that particular scope of work. And so the city manager has the authority to do that. Now, it still has to be budgeted, but he has the authority to approve that change order on a construction project. So I just want to clarify why we have two different, we have an ordinance and also a resolution.
Are there any questions on what Dean has just explained?
yeah, so Dean, so the purchase order doesn't need to be budgeted? I mean, it needs to be budgeted.
No, it does, yeah, so basically, from my perspective, a purchase order is something that's handled through the Uniform Commercial Code, whereas the agreement is something that is a local contract. That's a simple way to do it. So when you buy something from a business, it's still technically a contract. It's just written into state law as a commercial code, Uniform Commercial Code. Okay, and so when we do a purchase order, we're doing it through the UCC. Whereas if we do a service contract or a construction contract, we're doing it with our local requirements for a contract. And there's just different areas of the law that govern them, and that's why we have to separate them out like this.
Yeah, so think of this, Councilmember Javed, as kind of the how I spend within budget, not
Right.
changing anything for the budget or appropriate. But you guys, on an annual basis, you vote on a budget that sets all the line items, sets all the capital project, and then you guys specifically appropriate to the different functions, the general fund, based off that budget. So that's one process. What this is saying is how do I spend within that process, right? So that's why one of the examples we shared was like Manassas, where the city manager can approve anything that's within budget, right? So even if it's 200,000 or 500,000, as long as that's what it was budgeted for, he had the authority to go ahead and just approve it. But in this one, you're capping that as $100,000. So even if something you guys voted on and approved, like that commercial sign program was at $250,000, you guys have only given me authority to go ahead and proceed with that project at $100,000, but you budgeted $250,000. So I'd still have to come back to you all, even with this law change, to get approval for that contract for $250,000, even though you've already budgeted and appropriated for it. I still have to come back now because it's over. But what you're saying is here, all those items that are below $100,000, it's just more efficient for city staff to kind of knock that out as long as it's within the budget.
But there'll be no extra spending, I'm saying.
No, that you can't. We
Like
can't
with
do
these
that.
purchase orders, like the desktops, so you guys decide we need new desktops. Does that need to come to us?
If it's not in the budget, yes, it would have to come to you all.
That's not in the budget.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Again, I will get we will get hit in the audit if we spend more than what you guys are allowing
And
staff to
then
spend.
what's the need for this then? If it's already budgeted and he's already,
Because I don't have authority to spend right now independently of whatever you guys are already budgeting, right? Like, all you're talking about here is the cap. So what's the need for this is, the commercial signs is the best example.
Okay.
Right? If you guys like that project, you approved it, you budgeted for it at $250,000, right? If I had the ability just to spend within whatever is budgeted, then for that $250,000, once I get the contract back and we select the contractor, I would just be able to go ahead and get it done. But you guys are saying no, that only for things that are under 100,000 under this could you do that. Currently, it's anything under 25,000. So you're just changing that limit for me for either doing purchase orders, Dean's Point, to buy things or contracts for services. That's all you're doing is setting or changing the limit of what I have to come
so,
back to.
I mean, I just don't want to see that, okay, we changed this limit, you got the approval, 100,000, and then you approve it, you come back to us and say, hey, look, I had to do this, X, Y, Z, and now we have to sacrifice this in the budget.
No,
Is there a scenario that could happen?
No, that happens in the budget amendment. In the budget, that's why we do budget amendments. I come back and say, hey, look, like the commercial, and even for agenda items, right, that end up going into the budget amendment. So the commercial parking sign, again, is the best example where we budgeted $250,000. We did an RFP, it came back at $1 million. We said, we're not doing this for $1 million, but at least increase it to $500,000. We're going to try to knock this out at $500,000. So we had an agenda item. You guys voted on a motion there to go ahead and try to do an RFP for $500,000. And you directed the city manager to amend the budget, right, when we do the next round of amendment, to increase the amount to $500,000. Then a month later, I came back with the budget amendment, and it showed $500,000 there. And I highlight usually when something changes in the budget.
All right, understood. All right, no further questions.
No further questions? Okay, I have a comment. I want everyone to know that I appreciate your perspective, and I hope that everyone appreciates the perspective of those of us who have concerns, but I will not be supporting this. The reason that I don't support it is that I think it would have been a more deliberative process to approve a $50,000 limit for 1 year, and then it would sunset, and then at the end of 1 year, we could consider going back if it wasn't agreeable to everyone, or we could take up the conversation of increasing to 100,000. By that time, at the end of the year, we would have the benefit of the quarterly reports that city manager has committed to present to us, so that we would have more information, and we would know how many items were left off of the various agendas. The agenda sheets are excellent information for the public. That was a concern that I had. We also might be able to estimate the dollar savings that was mentioned previously, savings gained from not having those items on the agenda. So we would simply have more information. So those are my reasons for not supporting. Thank you for listening to me. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, is there anyone who would like to make public comment on this issue? Okay. Seeing no one and hearing no one, do we have a motion to close?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, now we are going to be voting this evening. That's unusual. Usually we wait a week and then vote at the next meeting, but moving on to 4A. Does anyone have any last-minute questions or comments? Laszlo, do you have any last-minute comments?
I do not know.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well, if there's nothing else, we have 2 staff-recommended motions. The first one is that the governing body approve an ordinance to amend Section 2-80 of the City Code to increase the city manager's approval authority for purchase orders and construction change orders from $25,000 to $100,000 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
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 Abstained. Okay. Lena, did you get the,
No, 3 opposed.
there were
3.
3 noes. Okay, thank you. The second motion is that the governing body approve a resolution to increase the total cost of contracts that the city manager can approve and sign from $25,000 to $100,000 as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed.
Abstained? Okay, motion carries. And was that three, okay, yeah. Did you get that, Lena? Okay, thank you. Okay, thanks, folks. Moving on to the budgeting presentations. First, we have social services.
So just a reminder about the new process here. So each department is just going to brief slide one, right? But we provided the whole packet for you all just to reference. So, and we have it up here if you want to reference any specific slides. So each department will just brief one slide summary, open it up for any questions. Then after each department's done, I just would have kind of a couple of just general budget questions for you all for additional guidance. And then we'll just open it up to any questions you guys will have. Okay, turn it over to Randy.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the governing body.
Welcome, Randy.
Thank you. I actually feel more nervous tonight because I think I'm the first one to go with the new format. So I'm like, oh, what do I do? But thank you for allowing me to be here. I pulled out to this summary slide what I thought was the most useful, beneficial, important information to make sure that you all were aware of tonight. Like City Manager Mr. Pelko said, I'd be happy to answer any additional questions either at the end of this summary or when we break out into our work session group. Here, the highlights of the changes between fiscal year 23 budget and fiscal year 24 all tie into our increased caseload sizes of our foster children. We are having to increase our legal services from 100K to 120K. A lot of legal fees, court hearings, a lot of adoptions. There's just a lot that goes in legally to make sure that our city is doing the proper guidance and policies when having these youth in our custody. So that is going to increase. And hand in hand is our CSA. That is the budget line that we utilize the most for paying for services for our children, as well as our IEPs for our school-aged children. So we did increase that by 9%. A highlight with the budget is that the state did stick with the no local match for the state budget line 849 for the Medicaid expansion. So they did increase that 4% as well. Moving on to the total revenue compared to fiscal year 22 to 23, 1,985,47 compared to the 1,836,866 in fiscal year 23. And then our expenditures were 3,661,098 compared to 3,489,271 in fiscal year 23. And you'll remember that our budget is unique in that there is a local and a state or federal match with most all of our budget lines. Some are even 100% reimbursable by state and federal. Some summary stats that really tie into what our budget requests for fiscal year 24 are relates to our pandemic, our Medicaid expansion. You can see here that our lobby visits have increased by 71%. And for some of that time, our lobby was actually closed. So I think you can get an idea of just how busy our office has really become since the pandemic. The need for services has increased. Our community size has increased. We've seen a 10% increase in our ongoing SNAP cases and a 10% increase in our Medicaid cases and 60% in our energy assistance. And if you recall, that is our cooling, our heating, our cooling for our summer and our winter resource programs for utilities. We are looking to increase our admin by one full-time customer service representative. We are looking at formatting our agency more to customer service. I feel we excel in that area. However, I'm concerned with this increase that it could become an issue. So we're looking at, adding a full-time customer service representative to help out with our admin and the increase in our visits and caseload sizes. The admin customer service unit is the face of our agency. They touch everything that comes into the office between all units. Let's see here. Our pandemic unwinding, the state has estimating that there will be a 25,000 Medicaid renewals on average per month and 40,000 calls on average. So again, correlating this to the need of increasing the strength of our customer service unit and our social services department is definitely needed. And again, the state reimburses roughly 60% of our staff and operations through laser. And then issues to share, I'm not sure if I necessarily consider this an issue for myself, but the state has proposed a 7% local COLA increase for staff. First time since I've been part of Manassas Park Social Services that the state is actually offering a higher COLA for locals than state employees. But it is going to require a 15.5% match. And just as last year, if the city doesn't do the full state-supported local match, we're required to not accept that funding. And that it's important to remember that state allocations are based off of previous years' patterns of spending. And if you're looking through our revenues and expenditure comparisons, you will see that in some of the line items that we were able to utilize because we had cases and services to provide it, that there were slight increases provided to the following fiscal year. And that's it.
Thank you, Randy.
You're welcome.
And your presentation was great, and I like the amount of information you included in the handout. That was great.
Thank you.
I have a question about the customer service rep. It's listed on the first page here.
Yeah.
Is it in your budget? Because it was not among the 8.5 FTEs in the last budget presentation.
No, it did not make the budget.
Okay.
Yeah, it's an additional request. So, every department had a request. I had to, when I showed you guys the FTE analysis a few months ago, you saw how far behind Calvin's department was. So I think this is kind of like the market adjustments where we really need to close the gap. That since I joined and I did the analysis from what's been happening 2009, it was Calvin's department that was gutted the most and hadn't been kind of invested in the most. So I had to prioritize in that for stormwater, for water and sewer. They're massive operations that have just not been staffed properly. So and Randy, presents a great case about all the increased workload and ideally we could get this, funded, but I had to prioritize what needed it, and those are the positions that are my recommendations for what to proceed with.
I wanted to confirm it because I couldn't find it in the
Yeah.
numbers. It was
Yeah.
not in the numbers. Could you please explain laser reimbursement for us and for the public? I've not heard that term before.
Sure. So every single expenditure our agency has, whether it's paying a staff salary, paying a counseling invoice for a youth that may be in our care or with the school, we pay that invoice or that bill and submit it through a state system called Laser, which then reimburses the city for the state or federal share. So Laser is what you would say Keystone is for the city. It's the state accounting system that we utilize on the DSS side to submit expenditures.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Comments or questions? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Randy, for a wonderful presentation. Going first, you did a great job.
Thank you.
And I love the condensed version here. The additional FTE that you're requesting, I see that you say it's not a want but a need. How much is it? How much would it fund the salary and benefits for that one FTE customer service position?
Let me see, I
Probably
do
the
have
notes
that
there
here.
somewhere.
I think here on slide, bear with me here for a moment.
That's all right.
Is it? Yeah,
That's for benefits as well?
correct. So, plus benefits.
I'll tell you. Hold on, give me a second.
Yep,
With benefits. And so the state will pay 60% of that, is that my understanding?
correct.
So what would be our Mr. Calculator?
So about $28,000. will cost,
$28,000?
I'm sorry, Laszlo?
So
$28,000.
for
That
28,000,
would
we'll
be the
get
city
one
share?
FTE.
Is that the city's share?
Yes.
of
Yes.
28,000. We get one FTE full-time to assist with customer service and.
Correct.
That's a wonderful
Yeah.
advantage.
Does
It
that
is.
include benefits?
Well, but here's the challenge. So the state gives us, it would include benefits. So the state gives us usually around June, and I wish we would have this information in March to help us out.
Yeah.
They give us kind of what the cap is
Yes.
for all these state codes that you saw. Again, Randy did an awesome job with showing every single revenue code, every single expenditure code, and describing what it is, because it's a complex budget. And the reimbursement process is difficult as well. They give us a cap, right? So 855 is the best one, because that requires just a 15% match by the city. And then when you expend 855, then it goes to 858. That's the one that's reimbursed. We have a 40% match.
It averages out to be 60/40 between the two lines.
Yeah, so about 40, but it's not guaranteed that if we spend above that amount that the state says, that they'll increase it. Now, they have, luckily, and so we have no reason to believe that they wouldn't. So when I give you the $28,000, that's, I'm pretty confident that that's all it would cost us, but there's no guarantee, the state could just say, no, we're not increasing how much 858 we've told you. We don't think that would be the case, and usually we're under budget anyways,
Right.
so we usually have some flexibility.
Could we make it a project-based position if we decide to fund it? And then if the money goes away from the state, the position would go away?
Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely your discretion, yeah.
Can you say that again?
If we make the position a project-based position and the funding goes away by the state, then the position would go away, as opposed to it being a full-time position in Randy's budget.
Similar to like the positions that are funded by grants.
Correct.
A
Yes,
ter- a
yes,
term-
yes.
term
Laura.
limited position?
Just like grants or term limited position. So something that for us to think about, I think.
Yeah.
The other thing I have is the COLAs. So the state is giving our local match of 7%, which is fantastic for the
Yes.
state to do that.
Yep.
I believe the city manager is proposing a 4.4% COLA.
Correct.
So if we just give the 4.4% that the city manager is recommending, will the state cover that, or does it have to be up to the 7%?
It would have to be up to the 7%. Now, I got this information as I wrapped up the budget
Yeah.
spreadsheet, so
Yeah, it's
I have to go back and calculate. Now, I think we had a lot more with the 4.4%, right? I wasn't assuming that the state was going to provide us revenue, so I think we have enough money already to do the full 7% and do the city match. But I have to go back in there and crunch the numbers. But I think we would be foolish not to do the 7% and take the state money.
That was my next
So,
comment.
yeah.
That was the next comment.
Because that would involve an
Yeah, we
increase
should
in funding, yeah.
definitely
That's
do
the
that.
higher match rate. That's the 855 line that funding is provided in, where there's only the 15.5 local match.
So we'd actually get more revenue by doing a 7%. So we probably actually would save money by doing a 7% versus 4.4%.
Seems like a no-brainer.
I agree.
Seems like a no-brainer. Thank you, Randy, for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You have to forgive my voice. Quick question here. It says that it's
What slide are you
proposed,
on?
oh, I'm sorry,
That's okay.
the first slide.
Oh, the first one. Okay, go ahead.
7% proposed, so is it hasn't been final approved by the state?
Tomorrow. They reconvene tomorrow. So we won't know 100%, but as far as the COLA, they're pretty confident that's going to pass. But could it not? Correct.
Right, you
Yeah.
don't know until
Yep.
all the votes have been tallied.
Yep.
And then to kind of piggyback on Councilmember Moore's question, because I was getting a little bit confused there. When folks get, if we decide to go the 7% route, folks in social services, would they just get the 7%? Or would they get the 7% plus the 4.4?
No, right now in the budget, I have a 4.4% increase that's paid by the city,
Right,
essentially.
because that was before we knew
Correct.
about this.
If we go 7%, we actually get 85% of the 7% funded.
Right.
So it actually, I think it's going to save the city money to then
Right, but my
reinvest.
It won't be both. It won't
Okay,
be
that's my question.
11.4%. It
Oh,
would-
yeah, it has to be, yeah, exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, if we do the 7% then, and the 4.4 on top, it would cost you more, right? Because you do the 4.4% that we have in the budget, plus 15.5% of the 7% as well.
Right.
Yeah.
And then my last question, I know that you're proposing one FTE, and I saw up there that you have 2 FTEs for customer service. So your current customer service person, is it an FTE or a .5 FTE?
Right now, we have 2 full-time admin assistants and 1 full-time admin manager. One of our admin assistants is leaving us in June, and we're taking an opportunity to possibly restructure that unit, provide growth opportunity for our current staff, as well as seeing how we can better meet the needs of our community. So we're looking at, more of a succession planning.
Right, so that's not, so people they want to come in, they're like, okay, there's a path.
Correct.
I'm not going to be stuck in this position.
Correct.
So this 1 FTE would,
So there would be
additional, so you have 3.
3 instead of 2.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
yep,
And then you're going to backfill the other position.
yes.
Okay, thank
Yep,
you.
mm-hmm,
Thank you, that's all I have.
okay.
Yes,
Is that-
go
is that- Thank you for your presentation. It's very good, and I
Thanks.
think your department has always been a highlight of the city and has done really well for the community.
Thank
I just have
you.
3 questions. So, and the question for you is 7%, because the state does 2-year budget, the cycle is for 2 years. So is that 7%, that's a 2-year, it's an increase of 7% for 2 years, or is that, it's a split of
No.
3.5, 3.5?
Yeah, for schools, usually they do it across the 2 years. For DSS, it's annual. They always tell us what it's going
Yeah.
to be the next fiscal year. And so they've done this the last few years,
They won't do
actually.
it 3.5, 3.5?
No,
No,
this
no, no,
one
no.
is
Yeah.
slated July 1st, the full 7%. As of right now, could they change it? There have been times where they'll say, 4% in December and the remaining 3% later on. But right now, as it's written, it's the full 7% effective July 1.
No, I do
Essentially-
support your need, especially if it's just 28,000, or if it's not doable, at least a 0.5 can be given, and that would be 14,000. So I am supportive of doing that.
Yeah.
The second question I have is your legal expenses gone up 20%. Does the state give you a percentage on that, on the legal expenses?
It does. It falls within our administrative costs, so it falls under that 855, 858
Great. And then
match
just
rate.
The last question I have, and I don't mean to cut you off, is there been confusion with Medicaid? Because I know it's been renamed to Cardinal Care. Has there been confusion in the public about that?
Yes, but no. I mean, I don't think that, we definitely have gotten some inquiries about name changes and whatnot, but I would say no worse than when it went from the federal marketplace,
Right.
to Medicaid expansion,
And
so
the program now goes there's 2 models within Cardinal Care now? Is that what?
I would have to get back to you on that.
I was reading it and it confused me because I know it's like but
Yeah.
that's just curiosity. But again,
It can be confusing, just like
good idea though. Cardinal
with
Care.
Anthem, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, whoever the private provider carriers are, it can be confusing for individuals to not realize that it's Medicaid, but that's their HMO.
Right.
But you're correct, they did just switch the name out.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate your presentation and what your team does. You've done a great job for the city, so thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, go ahead.
Hey, good evening, Randy.
Hi.
I was just going through the budget here, line items. I guess my question is, the staff doesn't get reimbursed anymore for using their personal vehicles if they need to travel or take youth?
Correct. So we're fortunate enough to be part of the fleet that the city has. So we now have 3 new vehicles. We have a Kia Carnival minivan, as well as 2 Kia Fortes. So there really isn't a need any longer for our staff to utilize
I thought it
personal.
was a personal choice. that-
Yeah.
Okay.
Nope.
So it's
We're
because-
good. We're safe now. Kids are safe.
And then how much, I guess youth is in our care right now? Did it increase from last year?
Actually, it decreased because if you recall, we had our highest ever, which was 22 at one point. We currently, as of today, have 14, but we've had 5 youth adopted. And there are some situations where we're able to bring a child into care and return them home. So it fluctuates. So the highest we've been within the last fiscal year to the comparison was 22.
Yeah.
To today, we're at 14.
Okay. That's it.
Okay, follow-up? Any other comments or questions? I have one. Can you explain and elaborate on coordinated community-based programs on slide 28?
There's probably a faster way for me to get to that slide. My apologies.
No, there
No?
really isn't, it's just
All
that way.
right. Are you sure it's slide 28? Am I looking right at it and I just don't see it? Ah, there we go. Okay. Okay. So, Safe and Stable is our funding source that we utilize second to CSA for at-risk youth. So, community-based programs are our agency utilizing services that are available in the community through community partners, counseling, mentoring, primarily that's it. Drug screenings, trying to think what else. That would be the majority of what services we're utilizing. Sometimes childcare.
Yeah, would any of those services be provided by the VCE? Or they don't offer anything that would fit into that category?
They do sometimes. For example, their parenting classes. There's been times that we've paid from this funding source for those classes if they're court-ordered. There's been times that we've used their financial counseling programs as well. I would say that probably the majority have been the parenting classes, though.
Okay.
But yes, we do.
Yeah,
Yep.
thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you, Randy. Any final comments or questions? Okay, thank you so much.
You're
Randy.
welcome.
Thank you.
Fire next? What's on the agenda? Is it fire?
No, it's police.
Police. Never mind. I got it.
Well, both are, man.
Well, one's before the other.
Oh, yeah, please.
Welcome, Chief.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the governing body. I'm here to present an overview of the FY24 proposed budget. One of the things that we noticed in this budget that there was an increase about 6.3%, which comes out to about a $411,000 compared to the current budget we're in. Just to identify a couple of the areas that we've seen an increase would be our overtime. We've seen a lot of emergency custody orders and temporary detention orders, which our officers are having to stay an average of 28 hours per case at the hospital with these individuals. Special events with our new community resource officer. We've been invited to a lot more events this year, and I think we're going to see an increase in that. Selective enforcement. Obviously, any complaints we get from citizens where our patrol units can't handle it because of call volume, we try to bring people in on overtime to take care of these selective enforcement. And then obviously court appearance and an increase in our hourly rate. That's why we anticipate probably that'd be an increase in our overtime for the FY24 budget. Maintenance service contract, we did see an increase on our Axon one, which wasn't a whole lot. I think it's right under $7,000. It factors in a lot of different other, like our records, our CAD system, and all that stuff. With inflation, we've seen an increase in travel education to send our officers and staff to training. Dues and membership, our academy did an increase this year across the board for all agencies in the region that are part of that academy. Our share came out to about $8,000. Inflation, we've seen in our uniforms, public safety supplies, the biggest one in ours, ammunition, has gone up a lot. So we have to order them ahead of time because there's about an 18-month delay. So that $22,000, a lot of it is for equipment. Our public safety radios, a Motorola, that we share a system with Manassas City. There was a $3,000 increase in their services. I believe theirs was a little slightly higher. And also we request or use Manassas City's animal control to house our animals when we take them into custody, and there was an increase in that. We did see a decrease in revenue coming in. I think the biggest factors on that was we did receive a grant for school security upgrades for $500,000. We also got a couple of positions for the school resource officers, and we did see an increase, significant increase in our photo enforcement program. Just to be on the safe side, this year we kind of anticipated a smaller number, and that's why we would see a decrease in that. In the proposed budget for FY24, we did ask for additional positions to address being understaffed for services and obligations and workload demands. These are positions that right now our staff has to do extra duties. One would be our internal affairs investigator, our accreditation manager. Obviously, with all the complaints of traffic, speeding, distracted drivers, and accidents, we would like to start looking into starting a traffic enforcement division. Our animal control right now, our officers are required to take animal calls and along with their other duties and take them to the shelter as needed. And talking to neighboring jurisdictions and asking them what we can do to do better. One of the areas that was pointed out, and we know that we have a problem, is our property and evidence room. We need to get somebody that's full-time in there at all time for the integrity of that room and the property we seize, and make sure that it's promptly being released to who and destroyed as according to law. So, did you get everything? Do you want me to repeat anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then there's another thing that we're looking into, and I think we're going to push this one off a little years to get security here in the community center. Obviously, get some officers to work in these buildings to provide security for staff and the people visiting here with the library, especially at the community center where we have events going on and childcare and classes, kind of like the school. Use the same concept we use with our school resource officer, but being in our public buildings. And obviously the additional parking enforcement officer to help with the complaints received, and have this officer work evenings and weekends. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Thank you, Chief. And, well, first of all, congratulations on providing excellent policing for the community while spending 20% less than the area average. That's very impressive. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's great. Comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
Well, first, please tell the officers thank you. You know, I have a fondness for the police department, and it's a very dangerous job, and there's not enough thank yous to give you all. It's not really a quick question, but when we were looking at the property and evidence officer, so would that be someone internally? Would that person need some sort of specialized training to do that job? And also, will we have to do any type of upgrades to our evidence room?
No upgrades would be needed. I would post it internally, externally, to see if anybody's interested internally to do it. And then the training, we would just have to show them our system, how we log evidence, how we release evidence, how we destroy evidence. So once they're trained, they should be fine. We actually would send them to whatever classes are offered at the academy, and maybe visit neighboring jurisdictions, property and evidence, and see what they're doing, and bring those best practices over to our agency.
Okay. And then the traffic division, how would that be stood up? I imagine that would be, you'd have to have like someone that's in charge of it and a number of officers underneath of it. Would they also need additional, not going to say machines, but additional cars for that? Or do we have enough cars for that right now?
I think if we start, eventually, I think we get there, I would like to at least see 3 officers with a supervisor, so there'd be 3 total, so it'd be 2 officers and a supervisor, but that'll be a working supervisor to oversee the unit. And yes, we would probably have to see our fleet and where we're at, might need additional cars, but if we can find them within the fleet, we should be able to make it work.
Okay. That's all the questions I have for right now. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Chief, and I appreciate everything your department does, working for the police department. I think it is critical that you do get a property clerk, even if that can be started at either at a .25 or a .5, because there's some serious repercussions with evidence. I know that firsthand because I manage a system that supports evidence. So I think we should look at possibly, what are you looking at for that? If it's not a full-time, if it was a part-time or even a quarter, I mean, would you be able to run it like 2 days a week, where to the public? Because I know the public, you have to provide their property back, and also the property they manage for cases, and you have to hold the property if they're incarcerated for life or whatever until. So I know there's a lot of management. It's pretty serious. So
Yeah, my ideal is to have somebody there full-time, but not only give them this responsibility, but also make them our quartermaster. We have a lot of equipment that's issued to police officer for accountabilities, who has been issued to releasing their property, making sure, or replacing. That individual would have that same responsibility. So be our quartermaster and our property and evidence officer.
initially, you could probably get someone to start initially and then build up over the years
Yes.
as funding comes in. So I think the evidence piece is very important, just understanding with state requirements. So I definitely support at least identifying at least a .25 or even a .5 possibly, if there's the possibility to.
Well, yeah, I guess I was going to comment. There's a couple comments on that position. So one is we think that we might be able to get a retired officer since they're not working the street anymore. Someone who's retired who's just going to help with, to Chief's point, with the logistics and managing that property and evidence. So we think it might be easier to recruit that than right now with patrol officers. That's one. Statement two, for both fire and DSS, their departments are allowed to have overhires. If you guys remember the analysis we did where prior we budgeted 24 FTEs for the fire department a few years ago, and we showed you the analysis that we were only averaging around 21, right? So you authorized overhires so that because we have turnover, and that brought the average to about like 23, and then this last year 24.5. We actually slightly exceeded it, but we had savings in overtime, so we came within budget. So that's the fire department overhire. DSS with also with having the turnover issues, you guys authorized an overhire position for them, and again we stayed under budget. So it's keeping that extra position, and it's actually off budget, and it doesn't actually have a budget impact because of the turnover. The department with the most turnover right now, that's coming the most under salary budget, is the police department. So this position makes sense because it's different from patrol officers, right? It doesn't make sense to have overhire for police because you just can't. We're struggling with recruiting, as is the majority of the nation right now, to recruit police officers. This is a unique enough position that we could theoretically put it as an overhire and actually get someone in here, but still their budget would actually still fall under because of the roughly 20% turnover that we have right now. So that's what I would recommend we proceed with it, because again, the funding's short. We talked about the additional FTE for DSS. I'm going to bring up the other issues that were raised via email about additional tax cut, additional pay raise. All this adds up, so we need to kind of prioritize. But this one I think makes sense for an overhire. They're not authorized any overhires. Fire and DSS are, so I would recommend we consider giving them an overhire position, because if you just look at their budgets the last few years, they continuously come under the salary budget that you guys set for them, just because we have the highest turnover right now with PD, and this is a national issue right now in terms of being able to recruit law enforcement.
I mean, that'd be good if you could do the overhire for at least the evidence. The other question I have is on uniforms. Going throughout the state and seeing different sheriffs, police departments, and even jail officers, I noticed a lot, and this is going nationwide, like a lot of uniforms are switching to like the polo and like the cargo. There's different color combinations, and I know a lot of officers like that better. Are you looking to do that?
I haven't had any officers express that they want to switch to uniform, but I can look into it.
And you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about,
So-
yeah, because we can put our patches on the
And
polo
I've
shirts,
noticed a
too.
lot of them don't even add the patches anymore, because even the sheriff's departments I've seen.
I
too.
like for them to be well,
Not
no.
police, it's the police, and then they put the proof, and I've
Yeah.
seen combinations.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually the new trend where they're wearing polo shirts, and in the summer they'll actually wear t-shirts, but they'll put their vest on top.
Yeah,
so
I like to have them a little bit more professional than just wearing a T-shirt, though.
it's the new
I
thing.
think the department really looks sharp.
It does.
Yeah.
Look very professional.
I would think there's also a sense of authority by wearing the uniform.
Yeah.
Yes,
Because
ma'am.
I've been to sheriff's
Absolutely.
departments, and even the actual sheriff is wearing that now.
Yeah, I'm noticing that. They're going to that, yes.
It seems like, and I'm just talking to officers, it seems like it's more comfortable. It doesn't wrinkle. I don't know, just something to look at.
Yeah, I know the bigger agencies, they save money by not putting patches on because it costs money. to
But
do
even just
that.
having the polo, I don't know. Thank you.
Comments or questions? Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. I noticed over the past week there were a lot of traffic enforcement going on. It seemed like every time I left the house, you guys had someone pulled over. Do you have any numbers on that?
They're going to give me all the numbers. They were working on them today. So what we did was took the 3 SROs while they were on spring break, and we just flooded the city, put them in every areas that we were getting complaints, and they did enforcement.
That was fantastic. People were actually not running the four-way stop last week. It was nice.
Good.
So we had a traffic enforcement division for a week. That's essentially what we
Yes.
decided.
It
to
was
do.
nice. It showed us what we could have. I think that's
Yeah.
important to do. 'Cause-
So I'll hopefully have those numbers for Mr. Palco here by the end of the week.
Okay,
So.
thank you.
Follow up?
Nope.
Councilmember Moore?
Chief, thanks for your presentation as well, appreciate it. But going back to the question about the property evidence officer, that could be a non-sworn position?
Yes, sir.
Oh, it could?
Yes.
And is that preferable, or?
You can go either way. Most agencies, like Manassas City, they have 2 that are civilians. They're not sworn.
Isn't it?
Huh?
Is it cheaper?
It could be cheaper, yeah, depending I don't know what the starting rate was for theirs, but it could be cheaper.
Okay. Yeah, I would think that'd be a good position to be non-sworn, or a retired person. That'd be great. But I like the idea of overhire for the police department, and hopefully we can address that in this budget cycle.
Great,
So
thank you.
Councilmember Jabet?
Hi, good evening, Chief. Question about, I guess, do you have knowledge of officers when they're about to retire?
What do you mean by knowledge?
I guess beforehand, or like how often, like how early do you know if someone is going to retire?
Normally, they got to give 90 days, I believe, notice
Yeah.
for VRS retirement. The only ones that I've, in our agency that might retire in the next few years, I think I got maybe 3 officers that are planning to retire.
In the next couple
3
years?
years, couple
Okay,
years,
So
yeah.
nothing immediate right now?
Nobody's talked to me immediately that they're planning in the near future. So I think there's like 2 or 3 years out.
Yeah, it's just being proactive, I guess, you know, short staff, thinking about to ramp up hiring,
Yeah.
you know, start thinking about that. The other question was about the parking enforcement. Okay, we have one officer right now doing parking enforcement, right?
Yes.
And we are currently trying to get number 2.
Yes, sir.
Does that number 2 person need another vehicle, the one that they're driving, or?
Yeah, we're probably gonna have to need another vehicle, but we probably won't go with the 3-wheel. That was pretty pricey.
Yeah.
Might just go with a standard car and add the equipment to it.
Okay, so we just have the 3-wheel one, and then the other
Yes.
person will do a standard car.
But if they're working stagger shifts, so the other person can use
Oh,
that
yeah,
vehicle
exactly,
as
yeah,
well
right,
during times as well. But if they're both working the same time, then they would have to use a different vehicle.
Right. And then this person would be doing like overnight, or is it just going to be like a 9 to 5 type of thing?
No, at the second one, we would put on evenings, and they would go on work on weekends also.
Okay.
We'll really need it for the downtown as
Yeah.
well in the future.
That's I think that's all the questions I have.
Yeah, no follow-up? Anybody? No follow-up? Or follow-up?
Just one quick question.
Yes.
Chief, how many dogs do we have?
3.
3? And, I know. And imagine they're different types of
Oh, we only
dogs.
have 2 right now, because one, we're about to go pick up here next month, but right now, currently, on the road, we have 2.
And we got one coming.
Yeah, we have one coming.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Do they
welcome.
have a little bulletproof vest?
Yes, they were donated.
Okay.
So the new dog would have to get new one donated.
It's actually a very valid question.
Yeah,
Pull your microphone down further.
Thank you.
okay.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Could you explain your 13th slide?
13?
Yeah.
So basically, this is a program through Axon, which is called My 90. Every time you call the police department, if you're calling from a cell phone, they'll send you this survey. And this survey asks you certain questions, and these are what some of the graphs you see. So it'll ask you, race, your age, male, female, and it'll track that. If you want to offer that, you don't have to. But those are the people that actually, that you see here, the numbers are the ones that actually responded to the survey. And we're looking at about 10% response back. So that's roughly about 380 that went out. We got 10% back, which, talking to the company, that's a good percentage for surveys to get a return back. But we're going to expand this now because I got a meeting to start doing it where they'll be able to, traffic stops get the same information right then and there to submit a survey.
So these are calls that are being serviced that aren't getting a
Yeah, so
survey?
basically, when you call the police department, you'll get a text message to fill out this
Okay.
survey.
All right, thank you.
But only if you call from your cell phone, not a landline.
Yeah, landline won't work, but cell phones, it will work. And I believe Fairfax is one of the agencies here that use it, and they're getting a good turnout out of it.
Chief, do you plan to use the new public engagement platform that the city now has? What is that called, Laszlo?
Zen City.
I'm sorry, what?
Zen City.
Zen City. Do you have plans to use that?
We kind of get in there because it brings in our social media platforms. Obviously, when we get our social media manager, they'll be able to give us, but I don't have time to sit there because I'm the only one doing it now.
Okay.
So once we get a person that can actually has time to go through it and look at it, I think it's
Yeah.
definitely beneficial.
And just to comment on that, that's not on the budget for next year. I don't plan to recommend renewal of it because, to Chief's point, we just haven't had the time since we don't have a communications office. So they sold it that it's so easy
Right.
that you don't even need a communications manager like Manassas has. They have a 2-person communications office that this would help replace that. So it's kind of a cheaper alternative. It didn't end up being like that. So that's why we recommend the trial, but I didn't put it back in the budget.
Yeah, okay. At first, when I saw the pie charts, I thought maybe you had obtained that information over Zen City. That's what I was thinking.
No, this is through the My 90 platform.
Okay.
They actually provide us all this data.
Oh, that's excellent.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Any other comments or questions? Thank you so much, Chief.
Welcome.
Much appreciated. Welcome, Chief.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the governing body. Tonight, I got the Fire Department summary for the FY24 budget. Put this in front of me real quick so I can see it. So the FY24 proposed budget shows about a 36% increase. So just to break that down real quick, 29% of that is contributed to the SAFER grant, which is about 1.2 million. The other 7%, about 391,000, is budget request stuff. The expenditure lines, there's 4 big lines that we'll touch tonight. The maintenance service contract line, which is we asked for an increase of about $44,000. That increase is contributed to the increase in revenue cost and the implementation of the what's called Lexapol policy guidance platform we want to start going with. Travel and education is going to go up. We're asking for an increase of about $8,900. That is to help offset the cost of all the new employees coming on. If you break down all fire department employees for travel and education, it's about $928 per person, which is roughly 1 or 2 trainings or 1 conference, so it's very minimal. Professional services increase is due to the inflation, also the bringing on of extra staff. So a lot of this is tied back to the SAFER stuff. And we're also looking to implement Emergency Services Consulting International. They are a consulting firm that would come in and do all of our hiring processes. They would vet them against all standards and policies, basically take out all the grievances for any promotional process we want to do. So we're trying to take away all the back leg stuff of anybody saying that Chief Soper ran an unfair process. So. The other part is the department uniforms would go up roughly $17,000 from $18,000. Of course, that is also bringing on 15 extra personnel along with inflation cost. And if you break down uniforms per person, that's about $875 a person, which is really relatively cheap. So the CIP is going to increase from $230,000 in FY23 to 1.125 in FY24. The majority of that is replacing the CARES equipment that we bought. I know it says ARPA, but in 2020, when we got the CARES money, we spent a lot of money of that on EMS equipment, cardiac monitors, defibrillators, ventilators, all that stuff. It's time for that to be replaced again. We don't have the CARES money again, so we have to do through CIP. So that's where all that money is going to be contributed to. The revenue is going to change from about 464 to 1.7. Of course, it goes back up to the SAFER grant, that 3.6 we're going to get over 3 years. The ATL, which is our aid to locality money, which is fire programs grant money, that's going to be about $69,000. And also EMS billing to the increased call volume is going to go up. So that's pretty much the entire summary slide for us.
Thank you, Chief. Excellent, thank you. Comments or questions? Yes, go ahead.
Just some clarification. Thank you, Chief, for your presentation as well. Very good. The Consulting International, 21,000. Are they going to be hiring the 15 or helping out with the hiring of the 15 new firefighters?
They will not be.
Okay, they will not be.
They will do mostly all of our internal hiring processes currently.
Got you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a good distinction.
But there are, let me touch one thing real quick. I'll touch this with you. Some of the services that group will provide to the department is career coaching. They'll also do community risk reductions, which is a lot of what we do. Succession planning, growth management, staffing analysis, which is something that could truly help myself with Mr. Palco. They'll do station location and deployment studies for the city. So all those things are strategic planning. So bringing this consulting firm in would truly help us plan for the future.
Gotcha.
So
How are the recruitment for the 15 FTE that the SAFER grant paid for?
So far, it's, we've gotten like 20 applications, I believe it was, as of this morning. It's a mix of some certified, a lot of uncertified, so we would have to get into some new ground there by hiring uncertified. But we do a testing process on April 22nd at 9 a.m. So anybody wants to come out and watch the physical agility test for the testing process, please come on out. We'll be there pretty much all day
Where will you be? I'm sorry.
at the fire station.
At the fire station.
Yep, 9 a.m., Saturday the 22nd. That's a lot going on.
What date? I couldn't.
Saturday, April 22nd at 9 a.m. There's also something going on here at City Hall, so.
We'll make sure they jog after back to City Hall.
Everything planned on that day.
Any other comments or questions? Daryl, Councilmember Moore, do you have a follow-up?
No, I was looking. I think I'm done. Thank you, Chief.
Yes, ma'am.
Hey, Chief. Once again, thank you to your staff. A quick question with the new hires,
Yes, ma'am.
and I might have missed it, but is in the budget, is it covered for the new gear for them, the jackets and the boots and the hats and such?
So when we presented the SAFER grant request to approve the 15 positions, that was in the additional $440,000 that Mr. Palco said that the city would have to pick up. So that money is being shown in our budget. So it's not shown in the 4 items we touched tonight, but they are
It's
throughout.
in there.
It is in there. It's in the FY24 budget.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Carrera?
No, thank you for your staff.
Councilmember Amaya?
I do. Have we discussed anything with the schools regarding recruitment for fire department?
So I have talked to the schools multiple times. They are starting an EMT program this fall.
Okay.
That's going to help us get recruitment. We have talked about the possibility of a VOTEC program for firefighter 1 and firefighter 2 in the future years. It's going to take a lot of work to get that off the ground with trying to find a training facility for us to use. Of course, it's going to be increased budgets for the schools to do the VOTEC programs, but we definitely would love to have the schools as our farm system to bring all the youth up to us.
Yes.
It'll be a great idea.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Yes, go ahead.
Hey, Chief, thank you. Question, if residents concerned about a business doing illegal dumping in one of the auto body shops, is there a non-emergency number they call, or do they call your department?
You can call the fire department, and the phone directory will push you to the fire marshal's office.
Fire marshal?
They handle all environmental crimes.
Okay. And then, I guess the next question was, we have one fire marshal right now. Two. Okay. I guess that's.
Yep.
Yeah,
That's
remember
my question
the budget amendment, because I had the same concern as you. We asked for the deputy fire marshal, so it was added during the budget amendment.
Oh, okay. And then I guess unrelated to the budget, but the guapos, what happened there? Any investigation?
So, I'll put it,
Accident, or was it actually?
there has been an origin and cause determined by the fire marshal's office.
Oh, okay.
I'd rather not on camera
Oh,
put that
sure.
out to everybody.
Yeah.
I can definitely shoot Mr. Palco all the information. He can get it to you because we're not quite sure where this is going to end up yet.
I see.
So it'd probably be best not to discuss too much out there right now. But yeah, there has, our fire marshal's office has determined origin and cause.
I see.
They can pretty much pinpoint what happened.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, if you can send that email, that'd be great. I'd
Sure,
like to know.
be glad to.
Thank you.
Comments or questions? Or are we done? Thank you very much, Chief. That was
Thank you.
great. Thank you. Okay, Laszlo, did you want us to go into discussion now as to what we would like to see changes in the budget, or what?
Yeah, if I could start off though with some questions just to get clarity, just if I can do some questions just to get clarity, and then we can discuss, because I think the discussion will revolve around these issues, so maybe that would be helpful.
Yes.
Okay, so far, just to kind of recap, via email or discussion tonight, it seems like there's 4 kind of changes you guys want to make to the budget, and that's as of right now. And that might, of course, change over the next few weeks. But for the real estate tax, there's been a proposal, instead of a 1.5 cent reduction, to go down a 2-cent reduction, so from 145 down to 143. That was a proposal, and again, I'm just looking for consensus to see what direction you guys want to take. For pay raises, we've seen proposal for 5% and a proposal for 6%. I'm going to go over all of them, and then we can maybe go piece by piece just to talk about it. For DSS, both council members Moore and Carrera supported the one customer service FT addition for DSS. So again, like to bring that up for discussion to see if that's consensus for everyone, for me to plug this into the budget. And then this isn't necessarily budget, but just more kind of authority because of the overhire strategy that doesn't go on the budget, but that's the property evidence officer. Again, just seeking consensus because I do track that in the budget, but off budget. There's a payroll sheet that I developed that I'd want to add to that just for my record and also have your specific authority to do that. So those are the initiatives. And if you guys want to, you don't have to necessarily decide, but you can say, hey, in previous years, remember we had like a 2-budget model, right? So I can develop another model that integrates these changes and present that back to you all on what that looks like. But I want to kind of get consensus where you want to go. Does the 2 cents make sense? Does the pay raise, is it 5% or 6%, right? What do you want to see in the budget? And then the DSS position as well. So those are the issues that are kind of outstanding right now that I'd like to get more guidance from you all on how to proceed.
I'd sort of like to speak in favor of the 6%, hoping that the governing body will have a meaningful discussion about this. The reason I would support 6% is because our staff, it would help our staff keep up with inflation. Inflation has taken a toll. And that's the same reason that I would support Councilmember Carrera's suggestion to have tax reduction 2% instead of 1.5. There was a time when the city would not have been able to afford to do 6% because we were in dire financial straits, but I think we can do that now. If salaries fall too far behind the other localities, then staff turnover increases. Staff turnover is not good for delivery of services to residents. It also presents extra cost paying for accrued vacation and sick leave. In addition, I don't think we have to mirror the school division at 4.4% that they're providing for their staff. Historically, we have not matched or tried to mirror the school division over time, and there were some years where the division was able to provide increases for their staff thanks to state funding, and we were thrilled about that. But at the same time, city staff, we were not able to provide city staff with anything. They got nothing, zero, no city staff salary increases. So I think city COLAs should be considered separately, and I think it should be based on whether or not the city can actually afford it. And I would look forward to a productive discussion about that. Thank you. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I would support the 2% for the reduction in the property tax, but I would like to see in your budget proposal what that would cost. I believe the Councilman Carrera's email stated it should come from reserves. I would just ask that you, what's your recommendation, where the money would come to pay for the additional 0.5%? Pay raise, 6%.
Can I just clarify, though, it's a 2 cents versus 2%, so it's a
I meant
2 cent
cents,
reduction,
yes,
yeah.
2 cents, not 2%, it's a lot
Okay.
more,
Yeah.
2 cents. 6% for the pay raise for COLAs. I agree with the mayor that the inflation rate is high in this region, and to make sure that our employees are able to keep up with inflation. I think we should definitely look at the DSS person, since we're only paying 40% of that position. To me, that's just an amazing buy, a good use of our money. And the overhire for the police department, that should happen. So if we do the overhire, does that mean that it will be just the property manager position or just any other positions in his list? Because he had like 8 other positions.
Well, yeah, so
listed
for, if you, in the budget itself, I had 2. So I had the internal affairs investigator, who I hope also can support accreditation. But we'll see how that goes. And then the parking enforcement. And if we get rid of the parking enforcement, I'm going to have to reduce the parking revenue. So it kind of pays for itself, if that makes sense. Yeah, so.
We're asking me, I would say the parking enforcement person. To me, accreditation is great. Calfa, I know lots of agencies have gotten their accreditation. But in our community, I think there's some higher needs.
Yeah, I don't have the accreditation manager, it's just in the eye of the IA investigator. I'm just saying I'd like to see if the IA investigator can also help with accreditation. So I didn't put the accreditation position in there. I didn't put the traffic enforcement. I didn't put the city hall security. I still want to see if there's a contracted solution for that as well. The animal control I didn't put in there. So there's not, it was just the IA investigator, the parking enforcement officer, and now an overhire would be just for the property evidence officer.
So it would just be for the.
Yeah, unless you want to call it two. We have two for the fire department. We have one for DSS though. And so it just, the reason why we have two, like, I can go back and do the analysis like I did
That would
for
be helpful.
fire and just see kind of where they're averaging.
Yes.
Because that's what we did. The goal was we know with the fire department, if they didn't have the staffing, then overtime just skyrocketed because they have to have, we were staffing at a minimum level for the engine and the medic. So
Correct.
the overhire made sense because then it helped reduce overtime costs. I can run some numbers from the PD and see how many overhires based off of how much under we're falling under budget from salaries
Yes.
every year, what we can afford from an overhire perspective.
For me, that's a better preference. I'd like to see your analysis.
And let
on
me
that
just add, I
as well.
support the DSS admin.
good.
I forgot to say that.
I appreciate
Yeah,
that,
Okay.
Mayor.
And I wanted to say, we've done such a fantastic job of putting funding into reserves that I would support taking a portion of the cost of our suggestions out of what we would be placing into reserves, you know. And I don't say that lightly, because I've always been a strong supporter of putting resources into reserves. But I think we've done such a good job, we're ahead of where we need to be, so, yeah, thanks.
That's
Yes,
all I
ma'am.
had. Yeah.
I agree with everything that's just been said about the three things. I would also like to see an analysis of the parking enforcement officer, I mean, not parking enforcement, I'm sorry, traffic enforcement. I wonder if that would almost be cost neutral as well. So I would like to see that run.
Give me 1 sec. I need to write this down. And
Are we
Mayor
talking
Shell.
too fast for you?
No, I'm trying to type, but just to clarify for the mayor, were you in support of the overhire as well for PD?
Yes,
Okay,
I
let me
support the
add your name for
overhire,
that. Give me
yeah.
1 second. Okay. And then, okay, so. let's see. Let's see.
Would anyone else support taking a portion of what we're talking about out of what we would put into reserves?
I think we were waiting for him to stop typing.
Yeah, so and just to clarify,
Okay.
and so Vice Mayor, you're supportive of the 6% raise versus the 5%, just to clarify?
Can
Yeah,
you-
I would like to
Okay.
see the numbers for the 6%, the 2 cents, the DSS,
Okay.
and the overhire and traffic enforcement.
Okay.
And I'm okay exploring taking it, portion, whatever, out of reserves, as long as you're comfortable with that.
Okay. Yeah, I'll present the analysis on that one.
Okay. Go ahead.
Ready for comments? Okay, I mean, well, I guess I'll start off with the reserve portion. I mean, I guess the reason we're at a good position is because we've been so disciplined, right? And I don't know, I'm kind of hesitant to kind of go backwards now, you know, now we're making great strides. So, I mean, I could go both ways, but I think I have a little hesitation on that.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the whole 900,000, I'm just talking about
portion.
maybe 400,000, you know.
A certain percentage. I don't know if you guys remember the email I sent the city manager about the pay raises in the last 2 years. And I think across the board, we did almost, 15% increase? I don't remember what the email was.
Oh, yeah, because the average last year was about 12%, and the year before we did about 3%. So, yeah, I think across the board it was about 15%.
Across, the last 2 years, so 15% increase, plus the stipends, the bonuses, the ARPA and all the CARE Act and all that. I don't know if, I mean, well, I know we're striving to get, close the gap and all, but 6%, I would like to keep it at the 4.4. That's just me. And then focus on the real estate tax a little more aggressively. That's just my take on it. They're still getting the raise, and they've been getting the raises almost every year, the last couple of years, plus additional public safety. I think they got more raises from the red light cameras as well, so 5% or whatever, the 6% increase additional on top of that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know about the 6%.
And I'm not trying to persuade you or anything, but 4.4 would not do enough to keep up with inflation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think because my personal philosophy is that when there's a need, when times get tough, you think of your people first. And in Manassas Park, our people are our residents and our staff. That's why I favored increasing the real estate reduction, and that's why I favor the 6%.
If I could just add too for the salaries, so what we've been doing prior to FY '23 was trying to get COLAs, but we've historically kind of fell under inflation. FY '23 was kind of our first crack at starting to close a market gap that we have. It wasn't a COLA, if that makes sense. It was just, hey, here's how far behind we are. Let's try to close that gap by 75% using ARPA funds. But we didn't do an additional COLA. It was just purely a market adjustment last year. So now we're back to COLAs again this year, and I hope to be able to do market adjustments. But the more you do this year, right, to keep up with the rest of the region, the more it closes the gap in the future, right? The gap will just widen the less you do now.
Yeah. So you're saying the 6% closes the gap with the
Further,
region?
yeah, because if the rest of the region is averaging anywhere from 5 to 7%, which is what they're doing, right? So if we do a 6%, we're kind of there. So we're just keeping up. We're not letting the gap grow even further.
Right, okay, thank you.
Can I clarify something? Did the police officers get a raise from the red light camera?
Yes, we use photo enforcement to, first step was we did a stipend program for police and fire.
Yes.
And then we also, because we were, again, just being, all the departments across the region were just initiated by the state police, who did a big pay increase above and beyond. Remember what we just did our adjustment, and then
Yes.
everyone else just kind
I
of
remember that now. Thank you.
completely passed us, so we did it for police and fire. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's go to this end. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm all for the 2-penny reduction. I'm very concerned about dipping into our reserves. I've been here long enough where I've seen the good times, but I've also been here with the really, really lean times, including 2 layoffs. So I'm very, very cautious about dipping into those reserves. I'd like to see the COLAs at 5%. Keep in mind, the federal government gave their employees, I believe it was 4.7% in January. So I think 5%. I have no issue with the overhire for the police department, nor the 1 FTE for social services. Though part of me also, though, wants to tread kind of cautiously, because I believe, City Manager, you were going to give us an update on what you learned from the economists at George Mason. So I really want us to kind of listen to that, because we have to make a decision not only for this year, but whatever we make this year, we'll tread down the road. I'd like to hear that, get that sooner rather than later. So nutshell, 2 pennies, yes. 5%, fine with the overhire, fine with the 1 FTE for social services, but very, very hesitant about dipping into the reserves.
This is my position. I appreciate everybody supporting the 2 cent. I would like to see the 2 cent. The 2 cent is 117,000. Going from 4.4, and I support the 6%, going to 4.4 to 6% is 82,000. If we keep 1 officer, to send 1 officer to school, it's $60,000. So we're making out right there, because officers are leaving. Unfortunately, that's what's happening. They're just leaving and they're leaving.
Can you
So-
speak a little slower?
Oh, sorry. So the officers are leaving, so to send 1 officer to the academy, is it still 60,000? It was 60,000 like a couple years ago. It's somewhere about that.
More than that, because the salaries go above that.
So,
The salaries are higher than that, so it could be more than that.
so there's a savings there if we can even, so we're talking about an $82,000 difference. So, and for 6%, a salary increase for across the board for almost 200 employees. Going to 2 pennies, we're talking about 117,000. You're adding an additional 900,000 reserve this year, which we can take that there, which is about 200,000, Mr. Palco? Well, whatever.
For 200,000 for what?
No, so it's 117 for the.
Oh, plus the 82
Plus
is what you're
82, I
saying.
think it
Yeah,
is.
I'd have to plug it in, and I'll let you know
About
what the exact number
200,000,
is.
so instead of going 900 additional into reserves, we would go 700. I do support the the overlap position, because I think that would pay for itself just between the gap, and I understand your mythology, and it's important for the evidence, because you have to retain every evidence of the Commonwealth of Virginia of anybody that's incarcerated. So if someone gets a life sentence or 20 years, you are required to keep all that evidence here locally in case of any appeals. In locally here at the locality, the police department has to do that, so it's really important that's just not an area we can make a mistake. I do support the social services position, because the state pays a high percentage of it, and I think it'll benefit the community, and that department's has run pretty well. So that's where I stand. Thank you.
I want to see, I think you said you were going to show us how it would affect the budget. So I want to see that first before I even say yes or no to the 2%, the 2-cent decrease. Same thing with the 6% COLA. I want to see how it would affect city's budget. I'm same with Laura. I don't really think we should be touching the reserves. But again, if you show us how it would affect, then I can make a decision. I'm good with the officers' position, and as well with the Department of Social Services.
And that was the plan, is to show you first, because, again, the decisions you make today do impact the future. So the steeper the tax rate reduction, the less you have to go in future years, right? It's a compounding effect. Same thing with pay raises. The more you do now, again, compound. But again, you have decision-making in the future to make anyways, but I'll show you kind of what today's decision does in the long run for us, and bring that back to you.
I do have a question for you, City Manager, whenever you're ready. You did mention a couple meetings back that you're doing a study for speed bumps. Is that happening currently, or is that down the road?
So for speed bumps, we're not specifically doing a study for that. The police provided kind of a speeding analysis for us when we did the high fine zone for speeding, and the area where it really justified the speed bump was Scott Drive, because of the amount of speeding that was going on there, plus because it was a cut-through. Yeah. So we're not just trying to deal with speeding there, because that was the high fine zone. We're trying to reduce the cut-through traffic, because it completely destroyed the road when we had to resurface it. And plus, it's a tighter road, so it was a safety issue on that road as well. So that was the only area where it really justified having a speed bump. However, if you look at the transportation CIP, Steve and Calvin have been able to secure grants for safety enhancements all along Manassas Drive, all the way to, I want to say, I won't say. I know it's somewhere in the east, but we'll get clarification when Calvin briefs here next week. But I'll take a look at it as well and send you guys an email. But it's somewhere in Blooms where the safety enhancements would stop. But so we have about $1 million in grants that we've received now for safety, and also for kind of analyzing the safety, what the issues are along Manassas Drive as well. So we are focusing on Manassas Drive. Manassas Drive was actually the worst part of the city in terms of speeding, obviously because of how the road is structured, and it is kind of a quasi cut through as well for people kind of going through our city. So Manassas Drive and Scott Drive were the worst parts of the city. So that's kind of where our focus has been. There was other areas like Digital, it seems to have issues as well, Polk. But what we did was we added the high fine zones there so if someone gets a speeding ticket there, then there's an extra penalty. With the Traffic Enforcement Division, if we get that, then that really comes into effect, because you're going to see a ramp up in ticketing. So hopefully that will dissuade more speeders there along those corridors. But the other streets didn't kind of meet the threshold. They were all under 1% of cars going 5 or 10 miles above on average the speed limit. So there are speeders, of course. Every street's going to have someone who's speeding. Right. It's just it's such a small threshold that it didn't warrant any action.
Okay. I mean, the only reason I bring up, because we hear from residents here and online about speeding going on Scott Drive and a couple other roads, and I know we don't have any plan in the budget right now for to make any improvements, but with these grants that the city received, can they be used for if we need to do speed bumps? Or is it just like?
It's not calling for it.
campers or-
Yeah, it's not calling for it. Again, I'll defer. I'll let Calvin and Steve know that you guys want a little bit more information about that, but they have the details on. I mean, I've seen it by intersection. There's calls for enhancements from VDOT to Manassas Drive, so they've kind of provided us those recommendations and the funding for how to do it. So, but I'll let. I don't want to misspeak here, and
Okay,
so I'll have
that's
Calvin
very
or Steve provide that.
Talk to them next week.
I just have a clarifying question, because Councilmember Javid talked about speed humps. Is that what we're looking at, or are we looking at speed tables? Because there's a difference between a speed table and a speed hump. It's my understanding that emergency vehicles have a difficult time with speed humps.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want anyone's home to be.
Yeah. Why it's taking so long for Scott Drive is because that's what we're doing is they're partnering with the fire marshal to find the right mechanism that's good for safety vehicles while also slowing down vehicles. So that's what's going on with Scott Drive is Public Works and fire are working together to try to secure.
Great.
Yeah, any measure to slow down vehicles, yeah, speed tables, whatever
Okay.
the terminology used. Last thing about I guess we're doing the budget here, and so are we not gonna move forward with any, I guess, the green plan type of, I didn't see anything or discussion about that. Are we doing an outside consultant? Are we gonna do maybe a electric vehicle charging station? I mean,
Yeah, so I put in the CIP $100,000 for a green plan consultant study. My goal
yeah, I
will
did see the
first,
consultant study, yeah.
My first goal is to first go to COG, try to get it done via grant funding or free. That's my goal, but I have their backup funding just in case if 3-4 months down, if you guys approve this budget, we can't get anything free or, and I have to rely on a consultant. We have the funding there. If we get it for free, good. Now we just saved $100,000. We can put that back into reserves.
I think that's wise, because the scope of what COG provides might not be the scope of what we want.
Yeah, it may help cover something, but not the whole
And,
thing.
yeah, okay, thank
They're very
you.
flexible, though. They work with all kinds of municipalities and cities.
Any other, do you have a follow-up, Councilmember Javed?
no,
Madam Mayor,
no, sorry.
Yes,
quick
ma'am.
question. Mr. City Manager, when is our next update about the downtown?
And specifically, you're talking about what's outside of closed session, or?
Both.
Okay.
I guess
We can go into closed session at any time, and I can go discuss kind of what's happening from
I
negotiation
think
standpoint.
that also plays a factor into the budget.
Yeah, sure. Okay. Yeah, if you want to, on the 18th, we can designate a closed session for discussion, but I'll have to talk with the city attorney about what specifically, but we have discussed certain items there, so I'll give you an update on how those negotiations are going.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, how about the
But I
units?
could say for Girani's and La Finca, that's under building permit review. Calvin's reviewed, sent back comments to their architect, so it's still kind of in building permit phase.
But there's progress.
There's still progress, absolutely. Yep.
I'm
Thank
not
you.
so sure that what we talked about in closed session would affect the budget, because I don't think your projections are based on that, are they?
They're not.
They're not.
No. So, well, for one part, yes. So, but I'd rather hold this conversation more for,
course, of course.
but you're right. The one big piece, I didn't factor that in here at all. So that would just be, we have more money now to
Yeah.
play with if we get that.
Yeah.
But the movie theater discussion is the one that still, that we need to talk about, that is kind of factored in this as well.
Okay. Follow-ups?
Nope, that's it.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything? Okay. Do you have all the answers that you need, Laszlo? You have?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you want me to
okay,
just kind of summarize everything, or?
Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good. I don't know if you guys,
That's-
okay.
Unless somebody wants him to summarize. Okay.
We're good.
We're good, yeah.
Yeah,
Amen, amen.
okay. Okay, moving on to our second public comment time. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment?
I just,
Okay, seeing no.
Madam Mayor?
Yes, ma'am.
you know me, I gotta talk. Just a reminder to like the 3 people in our audience and to those listening at home, April 22nd will be our first, I think it's our first event we're trying to get it for Keep the Park Beautiful, but it's gonna be the cleanup at Polk Park. And we have a plan for the surrounding streets, so folks, please bring your gloves, bring your trash bags, your rakes, whatever else you use to pick up trash with, park at Police Department and walk on down to Polk Park. So we hope to see people there. We're also going to be recognizing 2 residents who, on their own will, go out and pick up trash in the city. So we're actually very excited about this.
Yeah.
So hope to see everybody there. 9 a.m., Polk Park.
Did you want to say anything about what we just got approved?
Oh, well, yes. So last week, I believe, when Yvette was here, she mentioned that we got our approval for Keep the Park Beautiful. So we have our official declaration for that. This Thursday, we're going to sit through a 3-hour training on that. So thank you all for approving that, because things are moving. And so this will be our first one, and our goal, yes, ma'am?
Online training?
No, ma'am. So we actually, the 3 of us, plus I guess a few city employees have to sit in the conference room.
Okay.
And, which reminds me, I probably should like ask for food for us.
Or something?
Yeah.
Drinks, water.
But we're very excited, so there'll be more to come. This is the first one, and we'll be doing different things throughout the city
Yeah.
in the months to come. So thank you.
Cool. Be there or be square.
Exactly.
Okay, anything else? Okay, city manager, do you have a report?
I do not.
Okay. Okay, we have no closed session. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstained,